what sticks in people's craw in rural Ireland, and I'm speaking after my colleague, Deputy Pearse Doherty, so both as Donegal men, what sticks in the craw of Donegal people is that you have an investment historically of hundreds of millions every year in capital wastewater budget that is spent in cities and towns throughout the state to comply often with EU directives also. Hundreds of millions. And at the same time, people who wanted to build single homes in Donegal and other rural counties paid their own costs, paid for the installation, paid for the planning permission, paid for the site assessments, covered it all entirely themselves without any subsidy or support, often thousands and thousands of euro to do so. And they paid their own way. So now we have a bill, active legislation here, proposed, that essentially asks them to cover the costs of potential replacement also. So they complied with planning permission and department guidelines. They went through all of that. They paid fully for it, no subsidy, as urban dwellers have been receiving, and now they have to pay again. And they're starting to think, ironically enough for this subject, that there might be a tax on fresh air, a tax on living in rural areas. Now these communities are also watching the debacle over the threatened closure of Garda stations. They're watching small community hospitals and nursing units under threat. They're looking at their post office infrastructure under threat. They're looking at rural transport networks under threat. And you start to get a picture developing of basically a dismantling of the community, physical and public infrastructure of rural Ireland. And now this is really the final straw. And that is why you see petitions going to your minister with thousands of names on them from counties like Donegal. That's why you have public meetings that are packed throughout the county because of the profound concern about this. And we still, here we are in the Dáil, we still don't have specifics from the minister. What is the spec? Like, what is the spec in terms of what is required here? Because that would clarify matters. We don't have that. What we have is, referrals to the Cavan model and referrals to, we've been taken to the European Court of Justice. So if we've been taken to the European Court of Justice and if Cavan has been found to have a model acceptable, then there has to be a specification. There has to be a model, but yet we don't have it. We don't have it here presented to us. So we can't reassure those people who are profoundly concerned in places like Donegal. We also have a situation where, as I've said earlier, hundreds of millions have historically been invested year on year in the capital wastewater programme, which is distributed through the various councils across the state. Why can't some of that budget be reallocated to a grant aid system to people who have to replace? What we have is assurances from the Minister that he will look at this. That is not acceptable. So right now, as we speak, just want to convey to you, Minister, if I can get your attention, that the key issue of concern to people in rural Ireland is the cost of replacement. They are terrified, particularly families. I had a man on my door the other day outlining the reality for his family and the home that's been there for years. And they really fear that they won't reach the spec, which they don't have at this point.
Time is up.
And I'll wrap up with this. And they are terrified at the cost of thousands at this time. Absolutely terrified about that. So there needs to be clarity before you can seek the support of this House that you will reassure those families and you will deal with the double standards of urban dwellers who have all of these facilities free of charge and rural dwellers who have been asked to pay yet again to comply with an EU directive. That is an injustice, and I'll wrap up with this, and it leaves people with a sense in rural parts of this country and in Donegal that there's one law in those rural communities. It needs to be addressed before you can ask or expect the support of this House.